My sister got pregnant by my husband while living with us and wants me to leave so they can start a family, but now she feels cheated because my husband has no assets of his own. I, 34, let my 28-year-old sister Julie move in with me a couple of months ago because I was in a very bad financial situation. Julie had lost her job due to the closure of her company. 2 weeks after that, she became seriously ill with the West Nile virus. After talking with my parents, I decided to let her move in with me for a few weeks so I could care for her, monitor her progress, and make sure she could save on rent. Since she obviously wouldn't be able to return to work for a while, she was probably at her worst back then, and I was the one who helped her because our parents don't live close by, and she doesn't exactly have many friends in a position to help her. It was what I would do for any family member or friend, help them in a time of need. But she repaid me by having an affair with my husband. Furthermore, she had the audacity to tell me that I was the one who should leave the house so they could start their happy family because I was pregnant. This happened a couple of days ago. Julie asked my husband and me to sit in the living room because she had something very important to tell us. I thought she was finally going to move out because she had recovered quite well in recent weeks. I assumed she was going to tell us she was finally returning to work and would soon be out of our lives. Instead, she told us that she and my husband had been having an affair for the past few weeks and that she was now pregnant. When I looked at my husband, I saw that he was just as shocked as I was. Clearly, this wasn't something she had discussed with him before telling me, which explains a lot. Anyway, after she told me she was pregnant with my husband's baby, she added that she understood this would probably be a shock to me, and that she was very sorry this had happened. But at the end of the day, there was no way to change the past. Now, I would greatly appreciate it if she vacated the house, because she would feel very uncomfortable being around me in her current condition. I was furious, but I didn't show it. I simply told her calmly that I wasn't going to vacate the house because this property is mine. If anyone had to leave, it would be her, taking my cheating husband's ass with them. They could start their happy family wherever they wanted because I was going to file for divorce, and I didn't even want to see them again. I spoke to her as calmly as possible, controlled my anger, and tried to handle the situation with dignity. They'd already blindsided me, so I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose control in front of them. After I told her this was my property and I wasn't leaving, she told me I had to. Apparently, she thought I was joking. But then my husband told her that, indeed, he wasn't joking, and explained that he was a homemaker, and always had been. Apparently, I had lied to her about everything in the beginning. For context, my husband and I have been together for 8 years. We've been married for the past 5, and a couple of months after we got married, I decided to take a chance and start my own business. Thankfully, it's been going very well, so my husband and I decided he could stay home and work as a writer, which was something he enjoyed as a hobby, but could now pursue full-time. For the past 4 years, he's been home working on his great novel and taking care of the household chores. We don't have children, so he doesn't have much to do. The entire property and everything belongs to me because, technically, I bought it, and we both thought it was only fair that he belonged to everything. I bet he's regretting that now. After he told Julie that he didn't actually own anything and that he had lied to her about everything, she started losing her temper with him and claiming she'd been scammed. She started yelling at him, calling him a con man and a liar. Although it was entertaining to watch her lose her temper with him, I wasn't interested in any of that at the moment. I just wanted them both out of my house. I had to intervene, stop them from yelling at each other, and tell them to get out of my house right then and there. I wasn't willing to give them time. I just wanted them out of my sight. My husband is relatively intelligent. He knew there was no way I was going to get away from this, as nothing is more important to me than my self-respect and dignity. I was never going to forgive a cheater. So, he quietly went into the bedroom and started packing. Julie, on the other hand, decided to start begging me on her knees, telling me she'd do anything to fix what had happened. But she needed a place to stay. She said she couldn't kick out a pregnant woman, especially if she's going to have a child who will be her nephew. The fact that she mentioned we were family was what really enraged me. So I grabbed her arm, forced her to stand up, led her to the door, and then physically pushed her out. I was very rough with her, but I didn't care. I was furious that she said we were family and that I couldn't kick her out. It really infuriated me. We weren't family to sleep with my husband, but now she wanted to use that as an excuse. Once she was outside, she started begging me not to do this, but I slammed the door shut. Then I went to the guest room, started stuffing all her things into her suitcases in a haphazard manner, not caring if they broke, and within minutes I threw those suitcases out with her. I told her to get lost or I'd call the police. She continued crying, but I simply closed the door and went back inside. A few minutes later, my husband came out with his bags, telling me he was so sorry. I pretended not to hear him. Julie continued crying and pleading on the porch for about an hour after he left, but I put on my headphones and blocked her out completely. At a certain point, I couldn't hear her whining on the porch anymore and realized she was finally gone. That same night, I spoke to my lawyer, told him everything that had happened, and told him I wanted to file for divorce. I thought about telling my friends and family later, but the next day I received a call from my parents telling me that what I had done was horrible. To my parents, I had been cruel and insensitive to my sister, someone who had been going through a lot lately. I found it very strange because until now, my parents have always treated Julie and me equally. It's not like she was the favorite child or anything, but the fact that they were defending her didn't sit well with me at all. They told me they knew she was pregnant and couldn't kick her out of the house in that state, especially when I knew perfectly well that she was currently between jobs and recovering from a serious illness. They said it would take time for her to get back on her feet. Besides, she didn't have anyone else here who could take care of her as well as I could. All her friends were in the same financial situation and had their own jobs and families to worry about, instead of taking care of her. So, as her sister, the least I could do was forgive her for her stupidity and Bether for her. To top it all off, they pointed out that it was my husband who had seduced her and it wasn't his fault, since my husband had been telling her he owned everything and handled the financial situation at home because he was a very successful writer of novels and film scripts. Since she didn't want the fame that came with this, she claimed to remain anonymous. And my sister, who's an idiot, actually believed all of it. She started to think maybe he was someone important, so she ended up seducing him. Then, when she got pregnant, Julie thought it was finally time to inform Meth that she'd been having an affair with my husband, so they could both kick me out. Unfortunately for them, that plan backfired, especially since she hadn't even discussed anything with my husband before telling me all this. It basically ruined everything for her and my husband, so I defended my position. First, I asked them which sister. I don't have a sister. Then, I argued that I had every right to kick her out because she was the one who decided to have an affair with my husband. Regardless of whether he had a part in this or not, it was clear that she had an equal part. They had both teamed up to betray me, so it made no sense to kick my husband out and let her stay as if nothing had happened. I didn't care whether she was pregnant or not, or whether she could work at the time or not, because I'd already considered all of that beforehand and let her stay with me for months. She thanked me by having an affair with my husband while under my roof. Besides, it's not even that she was heavily pregnant and couldn't handle things. She was probably only a few weeks along, and I'm sure she could handle it. Even if she had been 9 months along, I would still have kicked her out because what she did was disgusting. After all, she was ready to kick me out when she thought our house belonged to my husband, so I see it as poetic justice. But my parents kept harping on that one point over and over again, especially highlighting how rude I had been to her. I got tired of listening to them and hung up. It was obvious they weren't going to let this go, and we haven't spoken since. Do you think I was wrong to kick my pregnant sister out of the house? Update 1. I know some people think kicking a pregnant woman out of my house is horrible, but I also couldn't leave her living under my roof. It's crazy. Luckily, most people think I did fine and that she should find a place to stay. But continuing with the update, I blocked my parents yesterday. Unfortunately, all of this has hit me hard. But I can't stop working to recover from what's happening in my personal life. I'm the boss. I'll just have to put up a strong front and deal with the situation. So, at work, it's been business as usual, but the moment I get home, I collapse because I'm emotionally devastated. I haven't let the cracks show in recent days, but now it's really starting toasting. My lawyer and I filed for divorce a couple of days ago, and soon I think my husband will be served. I know he won't fight the divorce. He knows me well enough to know that if he does, I'll make sure he pays for it. But at the end of the day, it still hurts. Winning the divorce isn't automatically going to make things better for me. I just can't imagine why. After 8 years together, he had to have an affair with my sister. I truly believed we were in love. I honestly thought we were going to be together forever and grow old together. But now I'm doubting everything we've had these past few years. Maybe this isn't even the only person he cheated on me with. Maybe this is just the first time he got caught. Even the thought of that breaks my heart, but there's not much I can do about it other than accept it and try to move on. He's the only person who hasn't tried to contact me since I kicked him out. My parents, and so has Julie, but that's different because I know they just want me to take her back so she can continue to stay here for free. It's even more insane that my parents are on his side right now. In my original post, I talked about how my parents never had a favorite child. They'd always treated Julie and me equally. But now I honestly don't know what to make of this. I have no expectations for Julie. Julie and I were never best friends, but we didn't get along badly either, so I agreed to help her and let her stay here. We already had a spare room in our house, so I thought, why not? That's what my parents wanted, so I didn't see any problem with helping her because that's what family does. At least I never expected her to betray me like that. I didn't expect someone you've been helping for months to stick a knife in your back. However, with my parents, it's a different story. Given that they've always been reasonable and fair, I expected them to be upset with Julie. I'm not saying they aren't. Based on the conversation we had earlier, it was clear they weren't happy with the way Julie had handled the situation. But they kept insisting that the damage had been done and that now the only thing we could do was accept what had happened and try to move on. Honestly, I don't know what's wrong with my parents, but they've seriously disappointed me with their behavior. I think I've lost all the respect I had for them, and I don't think I can ever get it back because of this situation. Right now, I'm emotionally drained, and mentally, I'm only focused on my work. Everything in my personal life has practically fallen apart. I haven't even talked to my friends about this, but I know that at some point I'll have to let them know what's going on. After all, my husband and I have many friends in common, and I'd rather they heard about the situation from me than from him. I don't know what he would say to them at this point. I don't know what to expect from anyone anymore. Anyway, right now, I'm just trying to focus on a couple of things for a while. First, of course, making sure my work doesn't suffer because of this, and I'll make sure it does. Second, I also have to worry about the divorce process. Although I'm 90% sure he won't dispute the terms, since I've decided to be fairly fair and reasonable, there's still a small possibility of uncertainty about what I might do. Right now, everything is unknown, so I'm getting all the paperwork ready just in case. Aside from that, I'm trying to keep my mind as clear as possible because I really don't want to overexert myself and end up spiraling. That's the last thing I need right now. But venting about my feelings here has been really helpful. And I really appreciate the fact that so many of you have reached out, commented on my post, and been so supportive. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. Update 2. As I expected, after being served, my husband decided to contact me and tell me that he wasn't going to contest the divorce. He thought the terms of the divorce were very fair. He sent me a text message saying all of this. And then in the next, he told me that, for the past few days, he'd been thinking of ways to apologize to me, but couldn't come up with anything because everything he could come up with seemed weak and insincere. So he decided to get it out of his system by telling me he was so sorry via text. He told me he'd lied to Julie just to impress her, because lately he'd been feeling very strange about owning nothing and having to rely on his wife for his finances. We don't even have a child, so he couldn't even have the dignity of being a homemaker. He felt worthless. Since his novel wasn't progressing well either, he felt like he'd wasted 4 years of his life on something that wasn't going anywhere. He'd been feeling particularly depressed about it, but he couldn't even admit it to himself, let alone talk to me about it. He said he felt really bad about himself, and when Julie showed up, before he could even think about how depraved what he was doing was, he started lying to her about everything, trying to impress her. Soon after, they were sleeping together. He thought it was just a slip, and although he felt very guilty, he couldn't control himself. He needed a way to distract himself from everything that was going on. And this was his way. But then she got pregnant, and we had that horrible conversation 2 weeks ago, after which everything went completely crazy. He told me he was truly sorry for everything he did. He ruined everything we had, but he promised me this was the first and last time he cheated on me. He swore this had never happened before and said he really needed me to trust him on that. Maybe. At some point in the future, if I could, he hoped I would forgive him for everything he'd done wrong. That was the message, and after reading it, I ended up in tears because it was just another reminder of everything I'd lost. I thought I had this man whom I loved and who loved me. But in the span of one day, I lost all of that. Believe me, it's not easy to deal with. I know that every person who's been through a divorce or been cheated on probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. He could say a bunch of horrible things about him to make me hate him right now, but at the end of the day, it still hurts. I hated myself for crying over that text. But at least after I finished crying, I mustered up the strength to block him without replying. To be honest, even though I was really upset about everything, I didn't deserve a response. I wasn't going to forgive him, especially not now when it's all so fresh. After a while, I actually started to feel a little annoyed with everything he'd said, because all he had to do was talk to me. I, for one, ever made him feel bad for choosing to stay home and work on his novel. I'm not a very creative person. I've never been one for writing or anything, except now, since I really have to get these things off my chest. But I respected his creative side. I didn't see anything wrong with him staying home. I could understand that maybe his fragile male ego couldn't handle it. Maybe other people made comments and maybe he just got bitter. But the least he could have done after 8 years with me was to tell me what was going on. We got married to support each other, and I was going to be there for him through that. So maybe we could have worked it out together. But he chose to lean on Julie, and that's how we ended up in this mess. The more I think about it, the more disgusting and pathetic it seems. The fact that he lied to her about so many things just to make himself look bigger and better is pathetic. I loved him just the way he was, but that wasn't enough for him. This will simply never make sense to me. At least with Julie, I can understand his motive. He wanted to live my life and achieve it without any effort, and he thought he could do that by getting pregnant and moving in with my husband, the supposedly rich man. So I can simply choose to ignore his existence now. In a few months, I'll be done with the divorce, and then I'll never have to see or think about him again. Update 3, it's been a couple of days since my last update, and I've had a quiet few days, but this morning my parents showed up at my house. It seemed strange to me because, in the last few years since they moved to my dad's hometown to run the family business with my uncle, they almost never visited. Usually it was Julie and I who had to go see them. So the fact that they had taken a flight to come see me was a big deal. But I knew they were only here to talk about Julie. That's why, when I opened the door, I told them that if they were here to talk about her, I really didn't want to listen. After all, there's only one Sunday a week, and I really didn't want to waste mine going over the same thing again. I'd already said everything I needed to say, and so had they. Right now, we had nothing more to discuss about that situation. I also made it very clear that I would only let them in if they apologized to me first. So they could apologize to me right now, or they could leave. I made my boundaries very clear. But my parents told me they had come specifically to talk to me about Julie. They said we needed to talk about this because the way I was treating them wasn't right, and neither was the way I was treating Julie. To them, we were a family and we handled things differently. Once again, they were bringing up the subject of family. And just like with Julie, I also lost my patience with them. This isn't how families treat each other, at least not in the family I'd like to have. At least I'll grant them that in this family, we handle things differently. My sister sleeping with my husband and me kicking her out of my house. That's very different from normal families. I completely exposed my parents. They kept babbling and arguing, but I didn't even let them speak. I pushed past all their arguments. After I finished, my mom was literally reduced to tears, but they were on my turf. I could talk to them however I wanted, especially since they decided to bother me this morning. They should be having this whole conversation with Julie, with the person who acted wrongly, not me. Anyway, after I finished yelling at them, my mom was crying so hard that my dad simply told me he never wanted to speak to me again because I was a horrible daughter for making my own mother, who gave me life, cry like that. But I don't care. They can think I'm crazy. I know I'm not, and that's enough for me. If there are any crazy people, it's my parents. Although my sister isn't very sane either, if I'm being honest. Update 4. It's been a month since my last update, and I haven't been in contact with anyone in my family. Not even Julie, and definitely not my parents. I just know they're sending them money. As for my soon-to-be ex-husband, I heard from a couple of people that he's now living with his parents. Once the divorce is finalized, she plans to move to another state. Before you ask, I don't know what she's going to do with her son. By now, virtually all of our friends know exactly what happened, and most of them have started to exclude him from their lives. At least, most of them. Some don't want to get involved and are trying to remain neutral. All I know is that my life is slowly but steadily getting back on track, and I'll do anything to protect my peace now. I'm not exactly happy, but at least I'm at peace, which is an improvement over last month. Little by little, I know I'll be happy again. All bad things always come to an end, right? Update 5. I have a fairly recent update because there have been some developments you might want to know about. So I'm not going to leave you all in the dark. My sister miscarried and has been blaming me because, according to her, she lost the baby because of all the stress I've caused her. My parents are also on the same crusade. The good thing is that they aren't bothering me directly, but rather this news is coming to me through neutral people, so-called who claim not to want to take sides. But in a way, they are doing so by accusing me of killing a child out of pride. I find this odd because none of them have decided to accept my sister into their home. So from my point of view, they should also be guilty by their own standards. I tried to be a good sister to her, helping her when I could. But if she betrays me, then she's the same as any stranger. She's no longer my responsibility. If she cared about her pregnancy, she shouldn't have slept with someone's husband, who just so happens to be her sister, or at least used protection. None of this is normal in the fantasy world some people live in, but I don't care. When accusations come from people as irrational as them, it's not worth my time. Update 6. My ex-husband contacted me a few hours ago, and you won't believe what he had to say. No, he didn't ask me back. We didn't end on bad terms, so to speak, that's why I responded. He's accepted that he made a mistake as a man, and at least he's made the divorce easier for me. So I don't hold a grudge. Although mostly I'm doing this for myself. It's not worth my time hating him or thinking about him in any way. No cheater is worth that. I think what he had to say is quite interesting because it basically confirmed that my sister wasn't pregnant. He called to tell me because he knew many people were talking badly about me, and he needed to know the truth. He's also told those people. He knows because he's been asking for proof of pregnancy and asking her to accompany him to a doctor's appointment on several occasions, but she's always been quite evasive about it. Finally, the news came that she's lost the baby. When he asked for proof of pregnancy, she didn't have any. He spoke to my parents, and they didn't have any either. There's no proof that she was ever pregnant or that she lost the baby. One day, she just woke up and told everyone that she'd lost the baby, so that's where this all ends. And so begins the big screw you for everyone who's been accusing me of making my sister lose her baby. My parents have tried to contact me to repair the relationship, and they've even stopped funding my sister now that they won't be grandparents. But this gesture doesn't do much for me. I don't care what they do with my sister now. What I wanted was for them to support me, like any father would with a daughter who was betrayed. So no, the screw you is for them too. So my sister lost a sister, a house, and my support for sleeping with my husband and faking a pregnancy. And my parents have lost a daughter for choosing a fake pregnancy. I think the three of them are ready to go to Las Vegas and gamble. I'm sure they'll do very well.